Canada, the divide, it's a little bit classist, but I think it's more geographical. So I don't know how you resolve it, because there's an antipathy in Ontario and Quebec towards the West. Not everyone, of course. There's wonderful people in Ontario and Quebec who
Yeah.
actually love Alberta, and
Yeah.
they love it for its characteristics. But I just saw in the Globe and Mail today some headline about Mark Carney made all these concessions to Alberta, and I thought, what
Yeah.
concessions? He put a bunch of
Yeah.
allowing Alberta to produce its oil is a concession. That's a gift. That's a hardship. And I thought, they would never say that about a car factory or the dairy sector. And I don't know how you solve that divide, because just the economics and the geography, how do you overcome that? How do you get the prime minister of the country to stop kicking Alberta when it's down?
Well, look, it's the last decade under the Liberal Party of Canada, and they were informed and advised directly by Mark Carney for years. I think one of the things that I would love to see, I think Mark Carney could do three things that would not just be a matter of placating the sentiment that wants autonomy, but actually addressing some really fundamental issues economically and culturally. The first thing I think he needs to do is apologize for that op-ed he wrote calling the truckers seditious. That was a horrific op-ed. It was wrong in every way. It was illegal. It was unconstitutional. And, Chrystia Freeland and the cabinet members that went with his idea that you need to follow the money and use terrorist financing, something they had failed to use for years. Suddenly they're using it against Canadian citizens instead of known terrorists. It was a horrible time. He was the architect of it. And if you're going to give speeches at Davos about, the lies that need to be confronted by stopping by insisting that there's power to the powerless, if you're going to give speeches quoting the great Václav Havel, you better live by it. And if you wrote an op-ed attacking people that were trying to make ends meet because they're truckers and they were tired of these, what turned out to be completely unscientific and very quickly dropped mandates after the Freedom Convoy had the courage to go and challenge this government directly in the only way they knew how, right? For them to be mocked by the Eastern establishment for someone in Mark Carney's power to write a note that is completely wrong and unconstitutional, calling them seditious. He needs to come out with an apology saying, I said the wrong thing about my fellow citizens who were hurting, who were trying hard, who were the ones that delivered everybody's packages for 2 years there in Muskoka when everyone was working from home. And they were the first ones to say that our long dated failed COVID mandates that everybody else was dropping around the world except us were overdue to be dropped. And we refused to listen to them. They did the right thing and came here and protested, and I was wrong and they were right. If he offered that kind of leadership, that kind of humility, that kind of power to the powerless, voice for those who had the courage to confront the lie at the time, then I think that would go a long way.
You forgot your bathing suit. You really want to go for a dip. This is what we call a last resort. If your most recent electricity bill says the rate of last resort, then your rate is like the rental bathing suit. It will serve its purpose, but there are likely better options available.
I think the other thing he's got to do is drop the C-69 and C-48, the tanker ban and the no new pipelines bill, and make sure that Alberta can start to create opportunity, society again for all of Canada. Right now, Alberta is funding Canada. Alberta is the one economy, the one economic engine that makes this country actually work. And the insistence on not recognizing that and not unlocking these, I think, obviously self-defeating policies is going to perpetuate the idea that Alberta can do better on its own. And I think there's a huge number of people that do not want separatism and sort of observe the obvious thing that you can't separate from geography. I think what we need to do, and this is a personal thing, but I would like to see us change the language of some of what we're talking about. I think we need a new architecture in Canada to allow Alberta to be prosperous, to allow it to pursue its autonomy. I think Alberta can be the Monaco of what Monaco is to France. I think Alberta can be the Monaco of North America and Canada, left to be able to create a much more progressive and inclusive economic opportunity society. And I think if Mark Carney would unlock that, all of Canada would benefit. But there's a very strong cultural dynamic that you're referring to that took place in Brexit that is just seems like it's very tempting in the East. And you see it in these bizarre headlines like the one you're referring to, that this is some kind of beneficent thing that he's agreed to do an MOU. This is the only country in the world with this level of natural resource wealth that is so deeply self-defeating. This is the only country, it's the bottom of the G7 right now. And if Alberta wasn't involved, we'd be a developing nation status in terms of our GDP. They've completely created a massive economic and deep security crisis by their complete mismanagement of asylum and immigration fraud at a scale that is now devastating, the economy. They're working on these bizarre, like free speech, hate speech, misinformation rules that are basically politicizing and criminalizing natural political dissent and mainstream views that disagree with their leftist perspective on a variety of issues. This is not a government with the mandate that Mark Carney has. And I think a lot of Canadians of goodwill were hopeful. This is a guy that will replace Justin Trudeau, be able to bring some economic logic back to the country so we can quit losing so badly. And instead, we see a year of what I think has been, some positives, but there's nothing of substance so far that's addressing the issues that I think are really animating the reason why a lot of Albertans say, I think we can do better. And if we have to do better on our own, we'll do it on our own. And I think that doesn't necessarily mean separatism, but it certainly means a lot more autonomy to build an opportunity society that's not deeply indebted and, running under some bureaucratic sclerosis that is preventing us from actually building a society that our kids will want to be part of.